Hello, everybody. This is Jim Young, CEO of Realcomm. Great to have you on Realcomm Live. We have a great show today. We reached out to some senior leadership in the industry to help us figure out where we are within the commercial real estate industry in light of everything COVID. And we've got Henry Chamberlain, the president of BOMA, and Denise Froemming, the CEO of IREM. Denise has been having a little technical problem. We hope that she'll be able to be brought in. But nonetheless, we're going to have a great conversation and hear from them on what's going on within their community, predominantly the property management industry and what they're seeing. So with that, why don't we bring on Henry Chamberlain? Henry, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, Jim. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. Boy, our journey goes back, what, 25 years?
Yeah, I always think of us meeting at LAX, on some bench somewhere, starting to get the real estate execs together, and from there we've blossomed,
Well, if you think, I remember that meeting very specifically. You were coming to LA. I drove up. I said, we got to meet. We got to talk. And we sat, I think, just outside a baggage claim or something. And,
Right.
and it was there we decided to actually co-locate our two events.
Yeah. And we had two great events. So years ago.
It was 2000 and 2001. I forgot the years, but the idea was that we'd put Realcomm and BOMA right next to each other, so our folks could learn more about property management, and your folks could learn more about technology. And yeah, it was a great experience.
And that cross-pollination's continued. We just haven't had joint shows since then, but our groups continue to get together at each other's shows.
Well, what's really kind of interesting is over the years, we all deal with the same organizations. You're more inclined to get the property managers. We're more inclined to get the IT and the technical people, but it's really been fun to see how they start talking and comparing notes, and the overlap of the skills, the property management, the lifelong skills required to be a good property manager, and then all this technology influence. It's fun to see those organizations come together on the topic of innovation and advancing the ball. So.
Oh, and absolutely. When I'm at Realcomm, I'd see lots of BOMA members and IREM members and other association folks on the management side, because you're the one-stop shop. You do just such a great job highlighting technology and solutions, and people bring it home.
Yeah. So we're having a conversation today that's a little bit like the one we had a couple weeks ago in Denver. And I want to say thank you for your efforts to make the BOMA side happen. But in that conversation, we had two execs from BOMA, IREM, and IFMA. Don Gilpin. Yep. And we had senior leadership. We had 3 come in virtually and 3 come in physically. And I think that was really a historic conversation, not only because we were in the middle of a pandemic trying to do a hybrid event, but because of the closeness and the collaboration, taking place amongst everybody in this particular time. So thank you for that.
Well, and number one, congratulations on a great Realcomm. The fact you did a hybrid event, had some people on site, really shows a path forward as we get the vaccine and all of the good things. And frankly, one of the good things out of the pandemic is it's put us all together. IREM, IFMA, the others have been sharing expertise, knowledge, programs, actionable information that has benefited everybody. So it's really brought us together closer, and I think we're much more effective, and we've been more value to our members. So it's in that sense, it's it's been a good experience. Hopefully we use this in the future and never have to go through it this way again.
It's definitely an all hands on deck moment. And it was, I think it's because of the partnership that you and I have enjoyed for 20 plus years, the collaborative approach to things. I think that made it a lot easier, right? Had we not been working together on and off for 20 years, I don't.
Relationship business, absolutely.
Yeah. So, a question for you. Obviously the theme in the last few weeks, actually last, probably 8 weeks, has been COVID, right? And the question is, you see a lot of organizations within BOMA internationally. Yeah. Can you give me a little update? I know we chatted and you said, DC is still boarded up and, it's having issues, but I can see are in the office. Can you just give me a little update on what's going on with BOMA, and its membership as it relates to dealing with COVID today? And then we'll talk a little bit about what you foresee in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, as you said. I mean, Washington, we are 10% or less occupied downtown. Suburbs are doing a lot better. We see that around the country, but generally people have not come back in big numbers to offices. We've talked about schools. I think schools need to reopen. We want to have the vaccine in place. That's going to play out in the spring for the numbers to come back. We've shown people that we can get them back into offices safely. Wear your masks, clean your hands, disinfect, separate, control the crowd, all the good things. We've shown we can get people back safely, but there's the whole psychology of getting people to believe that. And of course, we've been working well from home. We left March 13th and we started working from home, and we've been very productive, and you see that across tenant mixes. So the United States is coming back slowly. It really depends on market, as we've talked about. The coasts tend to be much more locked down. And I guess I throw Chicago into that mix now. Middle of the country has been more open, but of course you see the cases going up. So we've got some work to do there. Canada is somewhat still locked down. We've learned some lessons there. They went through SARS earlier, had their pandemic tools, which we learned from. Of course, China, Jim, you and I have talked about China for years on the technology side, but of course the pandemic began there. So we learned from them in terms of how they shut down. And then we learned from them about how they re-entered the marketplace, brought people back, did it safely. And we've seen that around the globe. I mean, New Zealand, no cases, an interesting case study. British Council for Offices in Europe, a lot of research there in terms of what they've been wrestling with. And of course, countries have handled it in different ways. So we're still getting back to work. How's that?
Yeah, well, and this whole thing, I mean, is going to lead to a incredibly complex debate on privacy.
Yes.
Obviously, we've been following technology our whole careers. We know what's possible, what's capable. We see what China has done, with the QR code, the health QR code. Their society pretty, easily accepted that. We had a guest on a few weeks ago that said, that code is more valuable than passports. You can't go out, you can't. And in a country built on democracy and freedom, I think we're going to have probably a little bit more issue in that debate. And I suspect we'll be seeing that first quarter, second quarter, as we're trying to re-enter.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. I've been told we have Denise.
I'll just say from our standpoint, we've been wondering about temperature taking, Jim, for example, and I think you had a device on site at Realcomm where the machine would take people's temperature. I'm just curious as to how accepting people were of that. Hey, Denise.
Hey, Denise, good to see you.
I'm glad I could join.
Yeah, just reboot, right? That's all we ask you.
The computer would not turn back on. No.
Yeah. But that's expected 30 seconds before you're ready to go on, right?
Absolutely.
And the fun thing about it is, I mean, we've been dropping drones in general sessions and, I mean, messing up for years. I actually wear it like a badge of honor. If something doesn't go wrong, that means we're not pushing ourselves hard enough. So this is live. That's what comes with live. And if you don't like it, then watch afterwards, I guess.
Exactly.
We have fun doing it live because it is spontaneous and you just never know what's going to happen. Yeah, we did, Henry. And when we decided to do that hybrid event, we said, let's not just do an event and do the three, the social distancing, the masks, and the washing of hands. I said, we're in the building industry. And I think I shared with both of you, we sent people into the air conditioning, ducts, not literally, but figuratively. We had 12 people on site walking the facility. We had 16 people along with them on the virtual tour, coming up with some real recommendations for Marriott. And then on top of that, what we asked the hotel to do, we found 4 different COVID technologies on our own. Nobody's seen them yet. The symptom sense, blood pressure, heart rate, blood oxygenation, and temperature, walking through 30 seconds. Totally amazing. I'm not sure if it's 100% accurate yet. It's bleeding edge technology, but nonetheless, it was a pretty spectacular idea. Then, of course, we had the microbial swabbing, which we swabbed every surface and got a clean bill of health. We had the UVC robot, so if some COVID was found, you wouldn't send a human in, you'd send the robot in. And then we had the bipolar ionization. We had the portable units. We had 6 of them. So in essence, I mean, some people could argue that was one of the cleanest ballrooms in a hotel in the country.
Right.
And so, yeah, there are ways that, but it seems that there doesn't seem a big interest in some of these, which I'm surprised. And I don't know, maybe that's a question for both of you is, are you seeing a big outpouring of interest and people signing up for some of these new ideas? Or are you still seeing a little bit of a hesitancy?
Should I go, Henry?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So actually, a tech survey that we recently did in July said that about 2/3 of our participants said they really are going to invest more heavily in tech. So they're there to really understand the residents, the tenants' needs. So there is an interest. I know that. I think most are waiting to see kind of what sticks and what doesn't before they make a significant investment. Right. So they're all about the touchless technology, sensors, what they can do, and communication especially. So how can they communicate to their tenants that the space is safe, and so they feel comfortable coming back. But I think anything that's larger than that, I think it's a wait and see. So they're kind of posturing to see what's going to happen, and then I'll invest more heavily in the tech. But for sure, there's an interest in that.
Yeah, it's funny because we had some of these conversations in the April timeframe. Would you invest? And there was a real hesitancy because nobody knew how long it was going to go, and nobody wants to invest $1 million on something that is now no longer needed. A year from now. But it's this chicken and the egg, it's like you got to do everything you can to get people feeling confident to get back into the office. But there's a hesitancy to invest all this money if it's not going to be for the long haul.
Well, I think it's also important to remember, Jim, people are going through a lot. Tenant workforces trying to figure out how to get back. What are the rules? They're learning, and then they're trying to solve problems in their buildings, whether it's touchless or how they're cleaning. So they're looking at those new technologies. I mean, I think that's a real role for you and IREM and BOMA to put out those solutions and who's doing it successfully, so that they can learn from each other. I've been hearing about elevator cabs and how do we clean the air in elevator cabs? Well, maybe that's a solution in an A building that needs it. Maybe B and C buildings are going to look for a different solution.
We actually
really figuring it out, I think.
We almost had some technology didn't come together at the end. Elevator UVC, when there was nobody on the elevator, locks the doors, zaps the cab with UVC, light. You got to make sure you don't make a mistake because you could really hurt somebody, right? If you get it incorrectly. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what sticks, or are we going to forget all of this 12 months from now?
Yeah, I don't think people will forget it. I really don't. I think for years we'll have that top of mind of that occupant wellness and getting in a building and making sure you're safe and comfortable. I think that's going to be there for quite some time. But I'm not sure as far as the comfort level that people will need in order to get, to be in the office. It's really an optic. Some of it's optics, and some of it is, a frame of reference for individuals. But I know for my staff to come back in, they said, I want I want temperature checking. I want certain things before we come back, which was interesting.
Right.
So it's all driven by the consumer for sure.
And the other thing that I noted at our event, anecdotal for sure, but we had a little cocktail party, and everybody was doing their best. And I thought did a fairly good job. By the way, no instances of COVID at our event. And I was talking to the bartender, a sweet young woman, and she said, "Thank you so much for doing this event." And I mean, she was really thanking us. And I said, "Well, you seem, overly appreciative." And she says, "I usually do 8 events every couple days. This is my 8th event since March." And I said to her, "How are you making it?" She says, "We're buying in bulk. We don't leave the house. We're turning the heat down to save utility bills." And that was one of the reasons that drove us to do it. It's not just the buildings and the offices, it's all the support around these buildings, the restaurants, the dry cleaners, the drugstores that people go to. So I've been an advocate from the beginning that we should do this surgically. And I don't expect buildings to get back at 100%, but 10, 20%. And Henry, how many people you said you have in your office now?
Today we have 4 out of 30. We've been averaging 5 or 6, so 20%, which is a little more than downtown's averaging.
Yeah, yeah. Major city. Go ahead.
We're at the same level as well. We've been having about 4, but now we closed the office because Chicago has a shelter in place advisory. So we've closed, but we've had about 10%, the same as Henry in the office.
Yeah, and I've heard that out of New York, out of Chicago.
Yep.
San Francisco's in the sub 5, which is, you think, Salesforce Tower, that beautiful building. And then how does that CBD survive on 5 to 10% occupancy, or even less?
And to your point, Jim, I mean, we talked about, but my sandwich shop downstairs is hanging on. So we're privileged. We've got jobs. We're working. We need to tip those people and support them as best we can. And as soon as we can get back to business, we need to do it, because a lot of people are hanging on still.
Hanging on, yeah. I mean, and the pandemic is horrific, but this economic damage, and I don't think we're done, frankly. I think first quarter could be gnarly, and the first people to get hit are going to be those small business people that are just exhausted and have nothing else to hold on to. So I'm going to take a quick commercial break, if you would, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk a little bit about first quarter and what you guys are seeing, and then have a great conversation. So bear with us, and we'll be right back.
Want to know who we are? Let's start here. We do this, that, and we make all of these. We're here to connect and power just about everything around you. We help you save energy. We're not trying to save the world, but we are making the most of our energy and resources, and making access to energy and digital basic human rights. Life is on.
All right, and thank you to Schneider Electric, a longtime supporter. What do you guys think? It feel like a cable news show?
Yeah, absolutely. Very nice.
Love it. Yep. Very well done.
We've been running our little commercials. I shouldn't say that. I was going to say I never thought I would see us doing this, but that's not true, because we did our first webcast at Realcomm in 2001. And there were like 2 people watching from the next room. And I always wanted to do something like this, but the technology wasn't right and the market wasn't right. And we just decided this year we're going for it, and we're having fun with it. So really glad to have you guys part of it.
Thank you.
So let's talk about first quarter, and people say, yeah, let's do long-term planning. To me, 3 months is long-term planning, right?
Agree.
The new normal. So Henry, you and I were having a little conversation earlier about, what if it's not the pandemic that's keeping people from going back to the office, right? It is right now, and there's justifiable reasons, but that 2-hour commute, that mass transit, that, freeway drive in LA, 2 hours, an hour and a half each way, dry cleaning, elevators, losing the convenience of being able to take the kids to school. Nobody's really having this conversation yet, right? So, assume we put every piece of technology into the building you could possibly need to make it as safe as possible, but we still see resistance to come back. Are you guys having any of those conversations?
I think telework, we were talking a little bit ago, Jim, but we were debating telework policy a few months back. We're not debating it anymore. It's just a matter of what is it going to look like, I think. And you see that in a lot of the research, a day or 2 a week. Maybe it's Monday, Friday, so people aren't commuting 5 days a week and dealing with that, and they can spend more time with their kids. We've also shown that you can be productive at home and concentrate and all the good stuff. I don't think it's as good for bonding and brainstorming and being creative, but absolutely what we're seeing in all literature, and I think it's true, is that telework's here to stay. It's a matter of to what extent, and I think that'll depend on the industry. Telecom, technology companies maybe a little more, other folks, creative shops, maybe a little less. But again, as you said, with technology, even creative shops can share their files across lines, so you don't have to be together necessarily.
Right, but I do, and we've been pretty virtual our entire life here at Realcomm, but I absolutely understand personally the value of being together. Yeah. And I think, if you really dissected a workday and you said, how much time is actually working, doing the report, doing the research, writing up the order, versus that coffee room conversation about the kids and the ball game. I mean, I would be willing to bet that if we really dissected it down to the minute, a good portion of the day is relationship building and cultural, because you spend more time with work folks than you do typically with your family.
Right.
Right. And so if you
Right.
take that away, how you lose that synergy. And I do agree. It's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. Denise, what are you hearing from the IREM community?
Yeah, we're hearing the same, and I think the work from anywhere now that they're saying is here to stay for sure, and that those communication collisions that you're talking about, the water cooler conversations, those we all are missing those, and I think I often say I think we're working on fumes because the culture we created, the collaboration that we've built for years, is helping us to get through this, but I don't think it can last forever. I do think the commuting will telecommuting instead of commuting for 1 or 2 days, you may do it 3 or 4, but I still believe that you need that connection, and our members need that connection, because IREM and BOMA, they're all about connections, and you too at Realcomm. So
Absolutely.
the connections we need, and we have to get back to that because people are really missing that.
From a numbers standpoint, though, if after COVID, where 6-foot distancing is no longer an issue, which by the way, it's not in China anymore, they're right next to each other again. The question begs, if you're staring down at LA or New York and you see 50% of the people are going to commute, half the time, it's 2.5 days a week, whatever the number is, does that drop a demand for CBD office space to a recognizable number? I mean, do you see a short or a overabundance of space in these larger cities if only half the people are using these offices at any given time?
Do you want to go ahead, Henry? Or
Well, sure. I mean, I think we're going to get back to it. I mean, we're certainly going to see vacancy rates go up. They're sort of 15 now, probably into the 17s. Some of the major cities maybe a little higher. Sublet markets like 3%. So that's got to play out over the next 1, 2, 3 years. And people are going to do a little bit of downsizing. But at the end of the day, live, work, play is in the cities. People are going to want to get back there. So that's going to stabilize the workforce that's there. And the economy is going to continue to grow, those service jobs and all the rest. So I see that space filling in over time. So I think we're going to get back to it, but it's probably going to be 3 to 5 years before all of that's absorbed. You see the trend of smaller cities and a little bit to the suburbs. But there are reasons why people want to be in New York and San Francisco and Seattle and Chicago. It's the confluence of all the great stuff, cultural, business, lifestyle. And I think that's a mega trend that comes back. It's just going to take a while to play out.
Yeah. And like we were chatting a little bit earlier, one of the questions I ponder is the financial architecture for the commercial real estate industry, long-term leases, 30 years, terms for debt.
Yeah.
With all this uncertainty, this flexibility, that's going to show its face every lease renewal, right? That's what I'm watching, is that first iteration of lease renewals, which is typically 20% of a portfolio. Are they going to ask for 50% less space or and not the big tech giants? I mean, they've got their own needs, but the average law firm, the average accounting firm, what are we going to see them doing? And I think, to your point, that could take 2 to 3 years. And I think we could see a change in the fundamental way our industry finances itself and the values are created. So we only have like a minute left for our conversation. Henry, if you're talking to your BOMA audience, if they happen to be watching, what's your word of wisdom for this week, right? What are you telling them?
Think longer range. We're getting through this. Things are going to get better. The vaccine's coming. We've shown we can get people back safely. So think longer range. Don't get worn down by the immediate, but think about April, May, June of next year when we're really getting back to it.
And you're thinking, as we were chatting earlier, you're going to do your event in July. You're shooting for a big regular BOMA event this summer.
We do our annual conference in July. I know Denise will be there with us. You're invited.
Absolutely.
And we're going to try to do medical at the end of April in Dallas.
Okay, good. And we're trying to do CIO forums, hybrid events, January, February, March, 3 different cities, small groups, but hybrid, bringing the outside world in. We're going to take our hybrid experience to another level. So yeah, we're excited. We'll share that with you guys, so you don't have to do the scars like we have.
Yeah.
Denise, how about you to your community?
I would say too long term, but I would say, lean on each other because we are stronger together. And to Henry's point, I would think COVID exit really, because you have to be in thinking about the future and why you're in this moment. And I think it's important, as you mentioned, Jim, your Italian restaurateur, she was painting her restaurant while she was serving outside, anticipating the future. So anticipate the future because it will be here probably before we know it, honestly. We just have to get through.
Just got to get through it. Yeah. And again, I want to thank you too, not just for being on the show today, but for being dear friends for a long time. I love the collaboration. Again, let's learn from each other's scars so we can get to the finish line faster. And I want to have you back. I really do. I really enjoy speaking to you, and I think the audience should enjoy this conversation. So thank you. And both of you be well and thrive.
You too. Be well.
Thanks for the opportunity, Jim. Thanks, Henry. Bye-bye.
All right. With that, we're going to bring in my good friend and partner, Howard Berger, who is going to do our weekly news update. Howard, how are you?
Hey, I'm well, Jim. Thank you.
How did you enjoy that conversation?
That was awesome. Henry and Denise are two of my favorite people.
Aren't they? And they are such great leaders, and both of those communities, organizations are lucky to have both of them. They are true warriors in every respect. So
we've got great relationship.
Them for hours. It's easy. So I'll get out of your hair. Why don't you bring us up to speed on what's going on this week with real estate technology and what your top stories are?
Thanks, Jim. So here's a sampling of our featured stories from this week's weekly news briefing. Now that's released every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific. So subscription's free, and you can subscribe by going to our website, realcomm.com, and just click on news. So as part of our annual Realcomm IBCon conference, we host a series of live streamed interviews with a number of industry thought leaders. And then at our hybrid conference a couple of weeks ago, we had 35 Realcomm live interviews with folks from around the globe. And this week's lead story features 3 of these insightful interviews. Interview number 1 on digital transformation in office, industry, and retail, where Jim has a conversation with 3 leading CIOs from around the world: Amy Slater, CIO British Land; Sanish Kashav, CTO Prologis; and Aaron Pays, CIO Morguard. And for our second interview, Tom Shercliffe, founder of Intelligent Buildings, interviews Simon Oken of CIO of Tishman Speyer, focusing on Simon's simple yet powerful approach for managing IT operations. Also takes a look at Tishman's technology strategy for 2021. Great interview. And the third interview focuses on the trajectory for smart buildings globally. Again, Tom Shercliffe is bringing in 3 of our global smart building technology leaders: Matt Toner, Managing Director, CBRE; Luis Monger, VP Digital Buildings for Schneider; and Thano Lambrinos, VP Smart Building Technology and Digital Innovation for Quadreal. So link to this story, read the abstracts, and you can watch the full 15-minute interviews. They're really worthwhile. Also in the news, on the global front, British Telecom announced that they'll be working with a number of technology partners to trial quantum key distribution, QKD, as a security option for 5G. So for those of you who aren't familiar with QKD, it's the next generation of secure communications. It actually uses quantum mechanics to encrypt data using polarization states of protons as the secret keys. Bottom line, it makes communications virtually unhackable. So go British Telecom. And for our third story, we're all aware that there's business value to be culled from data and analytics. AI and machine learning are emerging as important tools to help organizations really actualize the value of their data. The question is, how do we do it and where do we start? So our third featured article focuses on 5 very specific use cases on how AI will change the commercial real estate sector. So Jim, that's it for me. There's a lot more in our weekly briefing, so check it out.
All right, Howard, always look forward to it. I know the hard work that goes into it, and it's good to hear what you think is going on this week that's important. So thank you. You have a great day. And again, thanks. All right. So before I provide the wrap up for today's segment, let's have a quick word from one of our great sponsors. All right. Well, wrapping another episode of Realcomm Live. This is getting more and more fun every week. The technology seems to be working. The conversations are easy. We're finding great guests literally from around the world. And I can't tell you how privileged I feel and humbled I feel to be able to engage these leaders in the industry, and specifically right now during these times. What did I take out of today's episode? Henry said it really well. Don't think just today, short term, think long term. We've been through trials and tribulations before. We will get through this. But what does it take? Leaning into some of the things Denise said was collaboration. Reach out to people. Don't try to do it on your own. I hate to say a cliche statement, but we are all in this together, and understanding what each other is thinking and doing, learning from each other's mistakes is critical. Conversation, collaboration is the only way we're going to get out of this and thrive once this COVID is beyond us. So with that, next week, actually not next week, we're taking a break for the holiday. The week of December 4th, we're going to have Jim Keurig from Brandywine. He presented live in Denver on a CIO. Phenomenal presentation. And then Justin Siegel from Boxer Properties, two really innovative guys that are going to really start to talk about what are we going to see post-COVID, what technologies are going to drive everything, and help get us through the next step. So with that, I'd like to say goodbye for today. And to all of you, be well and thrive. Thank you.